Hey guys, Pixelman 945 here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I have the third of um the three updated tier lists that I am doing this week. We did the fiction, we did the villains, and now I'm doing protagonists in fiction. Now, comparatively to the villains video, it's not been nearly as long since I last made the protagonist video. I think that was like a year and a half ago. So, pretty long time, but not nearly as long as the villains video. But, um, regardless, there have been more characters that have entered this list, especially in the top 10 areas specifically. Um, which I felt was worth updating in the list, and also a lot of other characters have moved around a lot. So with that said, let's get into the top 20 protagonists with the number 20 spot, Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I love Aang because, in my mind, Aang, I wouldn't exactly call Aang like a simple character necessarily, but Aang, in my opinion, is the best kind of just very simple protagonist because he's a very positive person. He has a very simple uh character arc. Um, and yet I think that Aang's character is an example of simplicity done in the best way. Because like I think Aang has a fantastic relationship with all the other like members of the cast, and he's just really fun to be around and follow as the main character throughout the entire story. So that's why he's number 20. Um, and number 19 is Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is my second favorite game of all time, and Jin Sakai is part of the reason why. Because he is fantastic protagonist material. Um, I really like the I really like the character arc that he goes on, and this idea of like becoming the ghost, and slowly that's like how his personality gets like more and more warped by the more actions that he does of the same thing. It's like the more he loses his samurai way. I think the way that that change happens is really interesting. And that's why Jin Sakai is number 19, because he has a ton of great moments, and I really like his character arc. Number 18 is Alucard from Hellsing, and this one is quite possibly the simplest one in the entire list. We're only going to get more complex with these characters the further along we go from here. The Alucard is quite possibly the most simple one in this entire list because Alucard is the biggest badass aura farmer in like all of anime, basically. Um, or like one of them. Like literally his entire goddamn purpose is just to hunt down vampires and look badass as fuck while he's doing it. And I love every second of it. And he's so ridiculously overpowered. Um, that it's honestly just hilarious. It's like Alucard is one of the main reasons that Hellsing is in my top 20 anime and why it is such an entertaining um watch. Um and also I think with Alucard, the kind of like history that's explored with his character and him being hundreds of years old near the end of the show is also really, really interesting. So there's that as well. Mostly it's because he's a crazy badass ore farmer. Now, number 17 is Fushi from To Your Eternity. And what I love about Fushi is the fact that I love the entire journey that he goes on. Like how he learns to talk, how he kind of learns everything about being a human, how the different forms of his kind of feel like the different characters in a way. Like, for example, in season two, when he's like in the body of was it Perona? I can't remember. Uh and like, the whatever the fuck the guy's name was, the descendant guy that was in love with the girl former Fushi, that was like sworn to be the protector or whatnot, had knockers in his arm. Um, uh, like that kind of thing. It's so interesting how like he he can be like perceived as these other characters and how he can like feel as if he's all of these different characters at the same time. It's such an interesting combination. Uh, and I like every single character that he kind of absorbs after they die because they were close to him. It's so interesting how like every one of those also has like their own unique bit of personality and their own small or big impact on Fushi as a person. And just seeing the way that his character develops across literal hundreds of years that the show takes place by. It is just um, some of the most brilliant main character writing I've ever seen in an anime. Um, the number 16 is Musashi from Vagabond. Musashi is a brilliant character to me because before I read Vagabond, I was kind of vaguely familiar with like the outlines of his character arc slash progression. At least I thought I was. And, it's not exactly that my initial impression was wrong necessarily, but more like there was a lot more nuance to it, which I had a fantastic time discovering for myself. Because, you know, a vagabond, like what I was familiar with is that like it was kind of a little bit similar to Thorfinn's, where he loves to fight and then he kind of realizes that fighting isn't always the answer. That was kind of like the broad outline that I was familiar with, but that description is kind of really inaccurate because um this is gonna be a long video, so I'm gonna be taking a lot of little water breaks, so deal with that. But um it's just like it's very different because there's a lot more nuance there. So instead of it just being that, it's more like he kind of sees the consequences of him being reckless, for one thing. That's kind of how it starts at the beginning, is like he learns to be a lot less reckless, and then he learns to not be as prideful, and which is kind of the lesson that he learns. I'm gonna butcher the name. um that's kind of the lesson that he learns from Master Seki Sai. That's not right, but it's something like that. Um and then after that, uh it's just like, and then with like the fight against the rematch, I should say, against Suji Kaze, and how he ends up winning that match. Um and also like the effect that Oko's character has on him, and like kind of humbling him and like making him a better person. And there's a lot of different aspects that I could talk about with Musashi's character. Um and I don't really want to do that, only because I don't know, like, if I could accurately describe all of the nuances and like tiny bits of development that his character gets. Because it seems to be like different things in relation to other character. And I feel like if I tried to do all of them, not only would this take forever, but I don't think I would be able to do it very accurately, at least not yet until I finish the story, because I still have a good amount to read of it. Um, and number 15 is Frodo. I love Frodo because he is he has another pretty simple character arc, but like I think it's just another example of like a little bit more simple but done so well. And um Frodo is like, I love how like brave and kind-hearted and caring he is. And I love kind of seeing the constant contrasts along his journey, of like how the ring is slowly affecting him as they get closer and closer to Mordor. And I think that those like little character changes is so fascinating. And I absolutely love his relationship with Sam as well. That's got to be one of my favorite friendships in all of fiction, I think. Um, Speaking of characters that go on journeys, at number 14 is Frieren. I don't think that I had any female characters in the last video that I made. But I think that was honestly because I made that video before I watched Frieren the Show or Apothecary Diaries. Um, so that's why they probably weren't in that list. Uh, Frieren is an incredible character because I love the archetype that she is. Like, kind of this idea of an elf that's lived for a long time, that can't feel emotions, that finally made that connection, made that one journey that allowed her to start feeling emotion, and how she changed as a person as a whole because of it. And I just love that whole idea. I love her interactions with every other character, the way that she kind of feels like a child, a mother, and a sister at the same time with Fern and Stark is amazing. I love their whole group dynamic. I really do. And um the constant like references back to like what could have been, and especially what makes me perhaps the most excited out of all the things that are going to be peak about the manga material that's being covered in Frieren season 2 is the kind of ways that the two arcs that haven't been adapted yet, uh, one of them really challenges Freering's ideals, and the other one I think does a really good job of like challenging her emotions. Or I guess is like another great emotional check point, I suppose, is a good way to describe it. Both those arcs are just as peak as everything else that's been in the first part of the anime, and I am so excited for Frieren season 2 for that very reason. Um, and that's why I love Frieren. And number 13 is Kenzo Tenma from Monster. Now, as I kind of explained a little bit with Johan in the villains tier list, um, I think a really big reason that Tenma is such a fantastic protagonist is because of the way that their relationship and dynamics work. But him by himself is still a very captivating character in itself, like beyond the whole dynamic stuff, which I'm not really going to touch on because I feel like I kind of talked about that with Johan in the villains list. Um, More so, I want to talk about Tenma's strength as a character. I love the way that he starts out kind of like this incredibly kind-hearted doctor, and I love that like there's a certain part of him that doesn't really get lost throughout the entirety of it, because like the whole theme of the show is like the way that um there's a monster in everybody, and like anyone can be a monster despite how good of a human they are. And while Tenma definitely kind of, what I think is so interesting about his character is the fact that like while he mostly maintains that consistent kind of part of him all the way to the end, there are other parts of him that become, you could describe, he becomes the monster in certain situations where like he becomes much more jaded with the world, and he becomes a lot less trusting of people, and he just becomes like more gritty in terms of like the way he lives his life. Like I think the first sign of that is like that episode, I think it's like episode 11 or 12, where he's like learning to use a gun for the first time. All that, but just fantastic elements, and I think it's so interesting to kind of see Tenma's progression kind of slowly more downward as a result of him just like becoming more jaded with the world and more like monstrous in quotes elements of his personality coming out. And number 12 is Edward Elric from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I love how intelligent Edward is. I honestly, compared to a lot of other shonen protagonists, I love that Edward is like this um I love that he's already this incredibly intelligent character who knows a lot and can actually use that knowledge to his advantage. I think it's such a different um detail that not a lot of other shonen protagonists have. And I think that Edward is also a great way to get introduced to the power system of alchemy, which is one of my favorite power systems in anime. I also love his relationship with his brother, and I just love his outlook on life. Like, considering he's like 12 years old or whatever, and like the youngest state alchemist, I'd be wrong about that. Let's see. Age. Oh, okay. He's 15 and he turns 18. Okay. Well, either way, I mean, despite being very young and like the youngest state alchemist in history, he is that for a damn reason. He is incredibly intelligent and and he like um tries to look for the most like any other option possible than what seemed like the obvious solution because he and Al pour for hours over different texts like trying to find an ultimate solution and not using the philosopher's stone because they find out that it requires human sacrifices. And I love that I just love how his personal conviction comes above even his own main desire to try and save his mother. Or sorry, um help his brother by restoring his body. And all those combined to just make an Edward Elric, in my opinion, like a standout protagonist that is like just way better than a lot of other shonen protagonists because of the different qualities that he has. And number 11 is Geralt from The Witcher. Now, as I kind of explained in the top 10 fiction list, what makes The Witcher as a concept, no matter what medium it's in, whether it's book, series, or game, what makes it so interesting is just being able to follow Geralt as a character and kind of see the way that the world and all the events in the world revolve around his eyes and from the perspective of a Witcher who are generally neutral. And seeing that different perspective and like how he develops in terms of learning to care for people and developing emotions that kind of go away from that sense of neutrality is just really interesting. And seeing how he like comments and is affected or not, or lack thereof by the various events of the world is just it's so interesting. And I think that like the way that those work in combination is one of many reasons that makes The Witcher so brilliant. Okay, kicking off the top 10, now officially halfway through the list. At number 10, we have Walter White. Now, Walter White is one of the most iconic protagonists in all of television. So this is one of those ones where I don't really know what I could say about what like what that hasn't already been said about Walter White because mm, because his whole character arc is brilliant. Um, he he goes through such a powerful journey of like becoming the main villain, and just seeing that. like everything about him is masterful. I honestly, I'm kind of at a loss for words because I don't know what I could say about Wonder Woman that hasn't already been said. Um, so I'm just gonna move on. At number 9 is Noah from Xenoblade Chronicles 3. He's moved down several spots, but that's only because the caliber of protagonist, let's say, has increased a lot. But I still love him as a protagonist. He's still one of my favorite video game characters of all time. And that's because, like, um, the entire journey that his character goes on throughout the entirety of the game is so interesting. Um, and it's really fucking good because, like, he starts out as this loyal soldier, and then, you know, the main group forms, and they have to stick together, and seeing the way that Noah is like constantly being this main leader for the group, and even though it clearly seems like he is going through a lot of his own issues, the way that he continues to persevere, um, and just keep uplifting all his friends and whatnot is just really powerful. And I feel like Noah has a unique relationship with every single character in the main group, which makes his character dynamics all very interesting. And and then like we get to halfway through the game and we kind of introduce M and N. And the way that Noah's character goes from here in terms of like the contrast between the two, and like how that leads to both characters having like personality breaks is just fucking insanity, and it's just peak video game writing. And also and like the way that Noah's character is explored so much through like N's different like timelines and lives that he lived is it's so powerful. And um and his romantic relationship with Mio is absolutely incredible. In fact, I don't know. Hold on, I'm going to. Okay, I was checking my favorite ships in fiction list that I did back in February of this year because I couldn't remember if that was on the list. It definitely was, which makes sense because it's probably my favorite video game romance of all time. So I'm glad I had put that in there. But their romance is incredible. At number 8, and brand new addition to this list. But as soon as I finished Rebirth, I knew he had to be in the top 10. That is Cloud Strife. Now, Cloud, I think, is an example like Musashi, where, well, more like Frodo, where it has like a simple outline of a character arc, but there's a ton of nuance to his character in it. Um, I love the general character outline for him, where he due to devastations with his past, um he he like kind of acts completely closed off to everyone and acts like he doesn't care, when in reality it is like, especially when I was playing through remake in the first place, not even like even way before I got to playing rebirth, like even when I was just playing through remake for the first time, it was like blisteringly obvious that he was that he actually did really care about about everyone. And I absolutely love that dichotomy because it's just so satisfying to kind of like go to yourself to like note to yourself how it's very, very obvious that he very clearly does care. And this is like everything about this that was really good in remake is expanded to the masses in Rebirth. And that's why after playing Rebirth I decided he goes in the top 10. Because remake wasn't enough material, but like Rebirth was more than enough material to make Cloud one of my favorite protagonists. Um because he is just like the way that his relationship grows with every single other character is nothing short of beautiful. And like I love his relationship with Aoife. And man, if I had finished Rebirth by the point that I had made that previously mentioned favorite ships in fiction video, that would have probably made the top 10, I think. Um, because I love their chemistry and Tifa's best girl. But also, I love his relationship with every other character. I love how his relationship with Barrett is built on gaining respect for each other, and his relationship with Yuffie is more kind of a playful older brother, younger sister type dynamic. And I also love how it's kind of the same thing with Nanaki in terms of like the younger brother aspect. And and in terms of like his relationship with Tifa, I think his relationship, not with Tifa, with Aerith, is probably the best in the whole damn game because uh, that's another very possible ship I could see. I just prefer Tifa, personally. Um, but I love how like almost delusional he gets because he becomes so emotionally attached to Aerith by the end of Rebirth that um he believes that she didn't actually die, which is actually fucking insane to me. Like it's still hard for me to wrap my mind around that. Not the fact that Aerith died, but more the fact that um I mean, obviously that was a very shocking twist, which I very sadly got spoiled on before I played Rebirth. Um, but through my own fault, totally. As does happen with a lot of things for me. Um, but what was more shocking to me than that is the sheer delusion in how he doesn't think that Aerith is dead yet. And I'm so curious as to like whether anyone will actually find that out. And and like or who will end up bringing the news, or if he finds out a different way, like cruelly, that Aerith is actually dead. Um and then I didn't even mention his dynamic with Sephiroth because I still have not made the list yet, but like the idea for top 10 rivalry dynamics in fiction, Cloud and Sephiroth is absolutely a spot on that list. Um and the way that Cloud kind of mixes with Sephiroth's omnipresence in the story, and like how there's several moments, such as like in chapter 10 when he almost kills Tifa and like knocks her into the water. Uh, that was insane moment, and it's so interesting the like seeing the way that Cloud's character slowly changes because of the fact that he has such a broken mind and how Sephiroth can influence that part of him. Um, so I absolutely fucking love Cloud, and I'm so excited for the other like supposed supposedly his character gets even better in the rest of the FF7 story. So I'm very, very excited for that. Now, um, when I said that I hadn't seen Apothecary Diaries when I made the previous list, there's another reason that it needed updating because at number seven is Mau Mau. Easily my favorite female protagonist of all time. Not quite my favorite female main character, but like number three or number two, behind Siri, in my opinion. And um, as I've explained before when I've talked about Apothecary Diaries on this channel, I love all of Mau Mau's energy. I just love seeing her on screen. I love how he gets when she's excited about medicine. I love her kind of like way denial of her like feelings for Jinshi and how she's like so purposefully oblivious to the fact that like Jinshi is obsessed with her and the way that that those two affect each other's characters is just beautiful and like Mao Mao's whole arc of in the first season of like discovering who her true family is and the way that that emotionally affects her is just peak and the way that her perspective is so drastically changed, uh, and how her ideals and emotions are so drastically challenged by like um she Laolon as a friend and how the two of them are like truly best friends by the end of it. Um which is another thing that made Lolon's character just brilliant. But like the way that Lolon as a friend just changed and challenged Malmo's emotions and perspectives so much was the main reason of why Apothecary Diary season two is my anime of the year. Even more than the stuff with Ginji's character, I think. So Mao Mao is a brilliant protagonist. At number six, and in my opinion, the pick for the um greatest anti-hero in fiction is Lelouch. Well, second greatest until we get to the number one spot on this list. Um, but like Lelouch is iconic. Lelouch's entire character arc is iconic. This is another one like Walter White, which I really don't know what else I could say beyond um like beyond you beyond like what's already been said about Lelouch to be honest because he is such a um he is such a captivating screen presence. Like anything he does, anything that you're following him doing, it is so ridiculously entertaining, being this like main focal point for the show. And I think that that is my favorite thing about him, but like obviously everything about his masterminding, the way he seems to become a villain only to be an anti-hero is I don't know what else I could say about Lelouch that hasn't already been said, but I love Lelouch a lot as a protagonist. And number five, and the highest new addition on this list, is Kenji from 20th Century Boys. Now, there's a lot of things that I could say about Kenji and that I will say about Kenji, such as the fact that he is a brilliant leader. He has so many amazing relationships with all of his friends, and you really feel like they're basically a family by the end of the story. And his like dynamic with friend as a character, and honestly their dynamic is really unique because compared to Monster, where it's more like, you don't see Johan as much and Tenma is more affected by it. I feel like it's this brilliant opposite in 20th Century Boys where you see a lot more friend, and you see a lot more how Kenji as a character and his character presence um affects friend a lot more. And I think that like I kind of only thought about it just now, but the way that it's like the opposite dynamic versus Tenma and Johan is in Monster is just it's so fascinating, and I think it's brilliantly done. Now, like I said, I could and did mention all of those things, and I love his like cheerful outlook on life, even in the depressing situation near the end, where he's just like playing his guitar for people, and like depending on what people say to his answers, he just comes up with fake memes that are like references to things. I think that's just I love all of the charm in that as well. And but that's not my favorite thing about his character. Um I don't know if I mentioned this directly on the channel before, but I am an uncle. My nephew was born this year. He's my favorite person on this earth. And you know what Kenji also is? An uncle. And seeing his relationship with Hana and the way that Hana connected with him, and Hana was like, and Kana um was Kenji was Kana's. I can't. This has been a long video. I'm struggling on the words here, but Kenji was Kana's favorite person in the whole world. I can't like properly explain in words how much I emotionally relate and connect with that. And that was a really big reason why Kenji ended up so high on this list. Probably the biggest reason, because I think that after finishing 20th Century Boys, Kenji would have definitely gotten a spot in this list. But if that aspect of his character wasn't present, it would not have been nearly as high in this list. Because that is easily my favorite aspect of his character, bar none. And to be honest, I don't want to say anything concrete, but there's potential that he might move up in the future. But that's going to be really hard considering the top four is unchanged except for one switch around in the number two and three spots. Um, But at number four, in the same spot as last time, is Luffy. Now, Luffy, I could mention a lot of things about. And there are so many aspects that people um smarter and better at YouTube video essays than me have done. And also with more knowledge of One Piece and just stories in general have done better than me at. You could talk about how he represents freedom um and how there's so many different parallels which make his character brilliant, and there's like so many moments which like are a brilliant part of his character, and you can say all that stuff, and I will probably agree with it. There's I don't think there's any like point blazing Luffy that I've ever disagreed with. um but that's not the main reason that I love Luffy. All those are reasons that I love Luffy. But and this is the exact same thing that I remember saying the last time that hey, like in the last version of this list that I made a year and a half ago. The main reason that I love Luffy as a protagonist so much is a lot more simple than that. The main reason that I adore Luffy so much is because he makes me smile. He makes me feel happy, and like just watching One Piece and watching him as the main character just makes me feel good inside. Like it just makes me think happy thoughts, feel happy feelings, and just like um feel like in a good mood. Because Luffy is such a positive and hilarious ball of energy of a character that I just love watching him because it just makes me feel happy. It's a very simple reason for that. Um, and speaking of characters that have very contagious personalities, even though he moved down a spot from the number two spot, he's now number three. I'm still addicted to his entire personality, and that is Okabe Rintaro from Steins Gate. From the very beginning, I've heard a lot of people say that like some of the beginning episodes of Steins Gate are slow, and I could not more heavily disagree with that. Not necessarily, I mean, I disagree about the pacing issue because I don't think that the beginning of episodes of Steins Gate are slow in the slightest. But what really just sucked me into Steins Gate from the very beginning, before the plot just absolutely kept me, was Okabe as a character. I just loved how over the top, stupid, like ridiculous and charming he was. Whether it's like a fantastic performance by Jun Nakayama in the Japanese or J. Michael Tatum in the English dub, both performances I think wonderfully bring out all the like quirky, hilarious aspects of Okabe's personality, and I just love how infectious that personality is and how it always made me laugh, and I love his dynamic and relationship with all the other members of the lab in so many different aspects, and just how his like contagious personality like just leached off to everyone else, and then the character development that he goes through with like his sheer desperation to try and save Mayuri, and this realization that he doesn't actually have control over time, and and the feelings of uselessness that he gets, combined with the hope that Makise brings them, and God, I love their relationship so much. I don't remember where it was, but I know it was very high on the ships list I made. Um, I'm in love with every aspect of Okabe's character and personality. Now, who was at the number three spot and changed with Okabe to be at the number two spot is Guts. Um, and this is another one where it's really hard for me to talk about something that hasn't already been said for Guts. Um, because he's like the most iconic protagonist in all of manga. Um, one of the most iconic in terms of any manga, I would say, and definitely like the most well regarded in terms of like seinen things for sure. Um, and I love everything about his nature. Like his relationship with every character, his kind of outlook on life, and like honestly, I think Guts actually is a different way to describe it than where I was going with that. And kind of abandon that train of thought. Go with something different here. What I loved about Geralt, I think Guts has a lot of the same strength, but even because I love following Guts through this awful and horrific and broken world in Berserk. And kind of seeing how he reacts to events. Like the core of what makes the Eclipse one of the most peak series of chapters in anything in all of fiction is seeing the way that Guts reacts to it and everything unfolding around him and like the sheer desperation and you know when he finds out the truth about Griffith, the sheer like betrayal and rage and raw emotion that he lets out is just um it feels so you feel so emotionally affected by it. Um and like that level of like emotional affection and attachment, I think, in a protagonist is done better with Guts than even the number one spot on this list. So that's why Guts is my number two protagonist of all time. But as for the number one protagonist of all time, it's Aaron. Um, I've talked about Aaron a lot. Um, Everything I said about the protagonist side of him in the previous video still stands. He's my favorite character in fiction, and so it should be very obvious as to why he's my favorite protagonist in fiction. Um, uh, so yeah, is that kind of a cop out? Yes, but I don't care because I've yacked about Aaron enough on this channel, and people know why I love him as a protagonist now too. So yeah, he's my favorite protagonist of all fiction because he's also my favorite character in all fiction. And that wraps up the video. Not as long as the villains video because we're at 54 minutes. Um, but still a very long video. But that was my top 20 protagonists in all of fiction. Let me know your favorite protagonist of all time in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. If you watched any part of the video, but especially if you somehow watched the entire video, which there's no way anyone does that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.